This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And it comes to this. Two teams. They've done this dance 2 years consecutively. They're going to do it again for a third time, and it could be the final time. We don't know. But what we do know is they are coming at the peak of their game, running through each of their respective conferences. The Golden State Warriors, the Cleveland Cavaliers give us the trilogy. Can LeBron James do the unthinkable after doing the unfathomable a year ago? So this is our special edition, previewing the NBA Finals matchup between the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And to help break it down to the bone gristle, we've been doing it all season long. We've been doing it for a few years, too. And if you've been tuning in, you know I roll out the red carpet for my right-hand man, 50 grand, NBA aficionado. Holds down www.shawsports.net. Big Kahuna, PNC, my brother from another mother. Majaja brethren, rolls fresh off of Jamaica soil, boy. My man, Warren Shaw. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Are you primed, pumped up, ready to go, or are you ready to dial it right back over there to the islands?
Well, I'm always ready for the islands, dog. Let's not get it twisted, you know what I mean? And since we're not heading and going to be in the building for the NBA Finals, I mean, what better place than to watch, the NBA Finals in an island destination like where we're coming from, Jamaica and thing. But nevertheless, we're here to bring another great show, previewing this NBA Finals, like you said, the trilogy. What we hope is going to be the last time, at least for me. Maybe I can't speak for you. I'm kind of over it. Like, hey, you know what? It's good. Rubber match is kind of how I want to see it. But if we're having this same song and dance, next June, in 2018, I'm going to be a little miffed, bro.
Well, I would say yes, but then what if the Cleveland Cavaliers pulls out a Houdini move, right? And adds, another piece. And then we're talking about, a quadrant like the Warriors, as we talk about a quadrant with the Cavaliers, because the Cavaliers failed to do what I think a lot of people maybe in the hush behind the, in the back room, like everyone's looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers, at the Golden State Warriors as the favorites. But I do think that there are a lot of murmurs, kind of like this Trump Clinton, election. Everyone is talking about, hey, don't be sleeping on the Cavaliers. Don't be sleeping on, what I'm saying? There's an elephant in the room that can tell you that this might not go the way everybody thinks it's going to go. And then after it happens, you sit there and say to yourself, wow, now we have to deal with the aftermath. And I feel like that's kind of like where the balancing act is that while it seems to be evident, if the team that has the most talent plays the way that they're supposed to play, they should win this, Shaw. There's still something to be said if something flips that narrative or flips that script of the storyline.
Yeah, I mean, and I can see where you're going with it. For me, there's really not much that can happen where I'd want to see these two teams in it again next year, no matter what changes and things that they make, per se. Because,
Well, of course, we want the Celtics to be the ones that's going to carry this narrative for 2018. I mean, I'm right there with you, bro.
Okay. Selfish reasons, absolutely. But anybody but these two teams. I don't even want it to be somebody in the Warriors or somebody in the Cavs next year. I just want to see these two teams at all in the NBA Finals. And it's not hate. It's just, as a basketball fan,
it's just saltiness. Get tired of, it's not really hate.
But you just get tired of kind of seeing the same thing. And again, the same narrative, replaying itself out. And that is just the nature of, I guess, the beast, if you will, when it comes to the basketball world and the basketball fickle. We like certain things for a certain amount of time. And then it's like, all right, well, you know what? Now we want to see like a redemption song. See these two teams maybe fall off, and then maybe a year or two after that, maybe they get back in there. But I would not be all excited to see a fourth matchup, no matter what happens this season.
Well, let me see if I could focus this in a little bit more, Shaw, because as you put this, I get the sense that what this then also says is this an indictment on what organizations and teams who have positioned themselves to be in the playoffs over the last couple of years during this run of dominance between the Cavs and the Warriors? Does this place more of an indictment on those organizations not doing the needful and putting the roster together to compete against either one of these franchises?
I mean, to some degree, it absolutely is an indictment on them. But, I mean, there's just not always a lot of moves to be made that can make up the requisite ground that is needed to get these two teams together. And I don't know, and I'm not wishing wishing bad on anybody out there, but at some point you almost think it's going to have to take an injury to, one of these main stars on these teams to maybe trip them up so that you can level the playing field a little bit more so that some of these other teams can catch up. They're just not there yet. And again, I would not be surprised if we're having the same conversation. I'm just not excited about it if it were to happen. That's all.
Well, listen, all fair points. And who am I to, sway the public opinion, so to speak? It is something to be said, though, that this narrative is being dictated by two relatively small market teams, right? The Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not major markets like the Chicago Bulls, the New York Knicks, or the Boston Celtics, or the Los Angeles Lakers, and maybe even to some degree the Miami Heat, who by all accounts, Miami is a major city, considered a major market, has a very diverse demographic, so to speak. And they've got a franchise down there that's won a couple of championships and has a marquee executive holding down the fort, right? But I think to your point, Shaw, this is where the emergence of superstars need to make their name. And so while we get into this preview, which obviously we got to break down the components between the Cavs, the Warriors, who the X factors are, the coaching aspects, the gameplay simulation, and then we have, eventually get to what everybody is obviously waiting for us to do is give our predictions, who's going to take it all and how many games. I think one thing that really has to be set in stone is looking at the characters, looking at the players that are coming in here with either momentum or with question marks. And can those question marks be answered? Can the momentum garner one of these teams hoisting that trophy? And I think that makes for good drama. So we'll get into all of that. Obviously, I got to roll out all of the necessary information. Get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFaceLee. We always encourage you to get at our Twitter handle, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. We're available on Instagram. We're available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn, Player FM, iHeartRadio. Also available on the Roku channel, also available on Google Music. So download any of these platforms. We encourage you to do it over and over and over to your heart's delight, leading all things up to the NBA Finals. One thing to add and one thing to note, we started doing this over the course of the last couple of years, and we're going to continue to do it again. Be sure to check out the Baseline NBA podcast. We will give our breakdown and analysis of each and every single game, whether it's 4 to 7 being played throughout the NBA Finals. So make sure that you keep it locked. We'll definitely keep you informed, but we want to hear from you as well through the course of the NBA Finals, as we will also be throwing it up live on the social media handles as well too. All right, y'all, so let's get right into it. Let's break this down. Between both of these teams in this playoffs, 24-1 is the record between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. I'm sorry, and the Golden State Warriors. I wish, right? But hey, let's give kudos to the Boston Celtics, right? Like, I got to tell you, the second best Instagram pic, aside from the one that had you posing our shirt, the Baseline NBA podcast in Jamaica, was that one little spoof on coming off a Bleacher Report where they were hoisting the Boston Celtics banner, saying didn't get swept, right? So let's give kudos that the Boston Celtics was the only team out of all of the participants in this playoffs to put a blemish on either one of these franchises. Okay, I feel proud about that. What are your thoughts about what the Cleveland Cavaliers not being perfect to put themselves in this position going into the finals?
I fell asleep at the wheel, and I couldn't have blamed them to some degree. No IT in that game. And they just let one get away from them, and Boston, to their credit, stood firm and was able to get a W out of it. But we all knew Cleveland was a better team going into that series, and now they get into their matchup with Golden State, with one blemish in the playoff season, but that means nothing at this point. Listen, if you saw Kyrie Irving at the Eastern Conference Championships, in the Eastern Conference Finals rather, when they were getting their Eastern Conference trophies, Kyrie Irving was ready. He was like, sitting back there jumping around like, "Ooh, boy, I can't wait to get up and some Golden State Warriors right now and get this thing popping off again. And the fact that Golden State has home court advantage, Cleveland's going to be going on the road and trying to swipe one of those first two games. I think is all the motivation that Cleveland could possibly want in this series. Despite their one blemish, they don't feel like it's a big deal. Golden State came in there, and they're undefeated, and these two are going to go, blow for blow, spar for spar. They're going to go at it, and I don't think the previous series have anything to do with what this matchup is going to be in the NBA.
So what do you think? So what do you think is the real motivation, Shaw, for Kyrie Irving? Since we're bringing up that narrative, like you've heard me heckle about this throughout the course of the second half of the season and even into the playoffs with regards to Steph Curry. Look, I love Steph Curry. I have the utmost respect for this dude. I think a lot of people have ill-conceived angst against him at times that I think is more personal than it really is about the guy's game. Is he by far, the best point guard? No, but he is one of the elite guards in the game of basketball, and that cannot be denied. And you want to see these great matchups between, the great guards, the elite guards, against another guys that are either on top of their game or at the top, or right around there. And what we saw last season from Kyrie Irving is he plays a different brand of basketball that Steph Curry doesn't play, or he isn't equipped to deal with just by himself. But one thing can be said about Steph Curry, when he is more likely the better team ball player, to get everybody clicking on all cylinders. You've seen that over the course of the last 2 years. And this contrast of styles is what intrigues me more importantly about this third time around, because the first time Kyrie Irving wasn't there on the basketball court. So now with that being said, Shaw, when I look at Kyrie Irving, what is the motivation? Is the motivation about him replicating it against the Warriors? Or is it more so about him reproving and restating the point that while Steph Curry has 2 MVP trophies, he still believes above and beyond that he is the better of the 2 guards?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, but maybe less of the latter. I don't think he's so much concerned about proving that he is equal to, better than, or better than Steph Curry on a personal one-on-one basis. And I'm sure he feels he's a better player. He should have that confidence in himself. I think it really is about, like, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors they re-upped. They're the ones who went out there and was like, okay, well, we didn't get it done. Now let's go get one of the top 3 best players in the NBA and add them to what we already have here. Cleveland has to feel some type of way in essence, like, yeah, you weren't good enough to beat us. You had a 3-1 lead, you blew it. And now just to beat us, you had to go get Kevin Durant. And now they want to be able to prove to you that that wasn't enough. You went and did all that, and you still can't win the NBA championship. And I think that's all the motivation Cleveland has and all the motivation Cleveland needs in this situation. Kyrie Irving all the way down to the last man on this roster. So I think for them, it's about proving to themselves and proving to the league that no matter what you throw at them, that they're still the best team in the NBA.
All right, so if we're talking about it in that narrative, right, Shaw, we're looking at it straight down those eye lenses. If you're the Warriors, what are you saying in retort to that, right? Because what I'm led to believe are 2 things. The Golden State Warriors knew they were playing with house money internally with Harrison Barnes and Andrew Bogut. I think the writing was on the wall, Shaw, that if they didn't win this championship, what would have been the likelihood that they would have kept both Barnes and Bogut? If they won it, everybody would have been saying, you got to keep this team, you got to keep this team, and maybe they don't go after Kevin Durant in that kind of way. I don't think that was necessarily the case. I think they knew from Jump Street that they were going to make a play for Kevin Durant, whether they won it or not, because to them, this is about a sustained dynasty that they're trying to build here. And you can't tell me that what happened to Harrison Barnes in that finals did not afflict his perspective about how he needed to come in that offseason, and what happened to Kevin Durant didn't afflict his perspective about who he wants to play for moving forward. And for the Golden State Warriors, what their mindset should be every single year you have this type of team in the Western Conference trying to make their way to the finals.
If they had an inside track that they had any inclination that KD was a real possibility, and I'll never forget, it was Wojo who broke the story at some point, maybe in March or something like that, a little bit before the playoffs had started. And they were like, okay, from a financial standpoint, they can get it done, and it's a real threat. And everyone was like, well, Wojo's the dude, but it just seemed a little bit far-fetched. And then you see that ridiculous playoff run that the Thunder had, where they really probably in essence should have and could have beaten Golden State themselves. And then for him to do what he did, it just goes to show that maybe Golden State really did feel like they had an inside track. All the rumors and rumblings about Draymond Green being in his ear the entire season and kind of recording him all along. But I don't know what would have happened if Golden State wins the championship. If this reality and situation with KD was always available, then I don't know that they would have been afraid to make a move to get rid of Bogut and Barnes, regardless. If they won last year and KD was still interested in coming and say, hey, well, I want to help you win a third championship in a row, Barnes and Bogut still would have been out of there. I mean, it's just you'd have to do the math there. There's one player is better than both of those players combined any given day and twice on Sunday. So for me, I don't know what their mindset was and can't speculate to that. But nevertheless, again, they didn't win. They added KD and they feel like, okay, it's all bets are off. They have to win. Otherwise, then what are they doing? And I would really be interested to see just from the drama side of things, and I'm not rooting for any team one way or the other, but if they don't win, what happens then? You know what I mean? Like that to me is more intriguing to watch from their standpoint than them winning at all.
Do you give the Golden State Warriors the same kind of bly that we gave LeBron James when he had that formation of Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and this Miami Heat trifecta, and they lost to the Dallas Mavericks back in 2011?
Would I give it to? I suppose so. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in losing to LeBron James, who I still feel is the best player in the NBA. And his hand of Mary Man.
And are we making the argument right now, though, to your point, Shaw, that LeBron James is the best player on this basketball court in the finals?
Yes. And I think I was listening to another show and some other conversation earlier before we recorded, and it's like, just say he just has to do it. There's not really much of a question. Is he the best player on the court? Will he just be able to do it on a regular basis? With all the talent there and all the different looks that Golden State's also going to try to throw at him. But to me, again, it's hands down. I love Kevin Durant, love Steph Curry, but they're not better than LeBron James, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting when some people, during the MVP run that Steph Curry had, I felt like Steph Curry, through certain points of the regular season, was proving to be the best player in the NBA, because there were certain elements to what Steph Curry had, you saw glimpses of, that somehow just didn't translate when it came to the postseason. Steph Curry had the clutch factor, right? Hits those great, drama, awe-inspiring shots. He also has the basketball IQ. He also has the ability to pass. He has the ability to dribble. He isn't the quickest, but he is the smoothest, right? And then we just didn't see that materialize through the postseason as much as we see it magnified by LeBron James. LeBron James took it upon himself at really the perfect setup to over-dramatize and belittle any and everyone who had a conceived notion that he wasn't the best player in the game, to do what he did at the highest level, the highest intent of pressure for a basketball player of his magnitude to do what he did last year. And so I'm beginning to wonder now, how do you scrutinize these other players if they don't step up and do these things that have faulted them up to this point where we were trying to elevate them? Steph Curry, he's got to step up. We've seen where he's now becoming a more assertive and a dominant type of player. The same thing can be said for Kevin Durant. So my whole premise is, when I look at this matchup, Shaw, these big players, they've got to step up and they've got to do their thing. They got to do their thing to such a level that it almost seems like an insurmountable mountain for a person like LeBron James to climb. Even if he has Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love to lean on, I just feel like without Steph Curry and Kevin Durant playing at the level that they should be playing at this particular junction in their careers, it almost mutes the whole perception of why we shouldn't be praising LeBron James, because in many ways over the course of his career in this decade itself, he has dwarfed all of the people that we keep trying to elevate to try to play to his level. He's been doing it since 2010, essentially. That's basically what he's been doing. That when he's met the challenge, he has somehow figured out a way to nullify anyone that we've somehow tried to put on an altar, almost like in the sense of a false god type of thing.
Well, I mean, and that is the greatness of LeBron, and I think Golden State recognizes that, and hence, the addition of KD. So, KD and Steph are, you'd say, two of the top five players in the NBA by most people's accounts. You know, what I mean, maybe you say Curry's, and again, like you were just alluding to, for the better part of the last 2 or 3 years, Curry was in that conversation as one of the top, if not the best player altogether. But okay, if you slide him down, and you throw in your Westbrooks and your Hardens and whoever else you may want to throw out there, your Kawhi Leonards and things of that nature. Okay, was he six or whatever the case may be? So two of the top six players with against the very best player, and then Kyrie and Kevin Love fall somewhere in the teens and the 20s perhaps, or whatever the case may be. To me, LeBron's greatness it nullifies so much about what other teams try to do, and nothing screams more to me than what guys like Dwayne Casey and Brad Stevens have said about LeBron this season, in his 14th year NBA playoffs, that he's actually better and he's smarter and he sees the game in a way that no 14-year veteran should, with his level of ability at this point of his career. And that to me is why, Cleveland is always going to have a chance no matter what Golden State does and who they add, because he is just that smart. And he's a coach on the floor. He's a guy who can make shots. He can rebound. He can block shots. He can play defense. He can do everything that you need to get done. And even when it's not going for him, he knows how to impact his will on the game to get other guys going. And that is what's so scary about LeBron.
Your turn to the baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our preview of the NBA Finals, the trilogy, the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's due to tip off in a couple days, like 48 hours from now. So, all right, Shaw, let's go ahead and let's get right into the semantics with this, right? What is it? The first thing I want to start with is the actual keys here, right? Golden State's blank needs to be better than Cleveland's blank. And I want to reverse that and saying Cleveland's blank needs to be better than Golden State's blank. And we're talking about offense and defense, which is, in your opinion, for either of these teams are going to be the key for them to win this title.
Well, that's tough. And I think there's a lot of different aspects to kind of digest in this. I think for Cleveland, it's going to be about, can their three-point shooting be better than Golden State's three-point shooting?
Interesting.
That's going to be a huge, huge factor for them, as well as the rebounding and the glass and things of that nature too. But I don't think, in essence, that they're not going to try to match wits with the best of y'all, as JC would say, when it comes to the three ball. They both shoot it, and that's going to be a premise of this series. That's going to be a huge thing for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I don't think they can win this series if they shoot a worse percentage or even especially not a significantly worse percentage, and even an overall mix against the Golden State Warriors. And on the reverse for me, I think Golden State is going to be in trouble if they turn the ball over against Cleveland. Now, ironically, Golden State is one of the best teams in terms of points off of turnovers, especially I think they're the best in the playoffs so far this season. But we've all seen where they get a little fancy, they get a little too cute, and they try to squeeze the ball in places that they can't go. And I think Cleveland will have the ability to get out and run. So for me, Cleveland needs to shoot the three ball well, but Golden State also needs to protect the ball on offense.
One of the things that I think is important for the Cleveland Cavaliers is their ability to rebound the basketball. Because to your point, Shaw, if this is going to be a basketball team that is going to shoot the three ball at a high percentage and they're not hitting it with efficiency, they're going to need second chance opportunities. You have arguably the best offensive rebounder in the NBA with Tristan Thompson. So he's got to be really the bully on the blocks, whether it be Pachulia, whether it be Green, whether it be McGee, whoever it is, he's got to be positioned to give the Cleveland Cavaliers multiple opportunities to shoot the three ball. On the flip side, what I argue for the Golden State Warriors is their ability to win the first and the fourth quarter. One of the things that's interesting is when you make a comparison about the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors, both of these teams can score the basketball, no question. But it's the propensity and the way that they score. The Golden State Warriors love to be the type of team that love to get out on a fast start. They can drop 60 to 70 points in a quarter. Forget a half. They can do it in a quarter. And when they're doing that, they somehow seem to just take their foot off the pedal. In the second quarter, Then they at times get a little slow coming out the third quarter. In the finals, and this was indicative of what happened to them last year in Game 7. They had a 7-point lead at halftime. They didn't do what was necessary to put the dagger in the heart of the Cleveland Cavaliers and let the Cleveland Cavaliers hang around going into the fourth. This year, the Cleveland Cavaliers actually score better than the Golden State Warriors in the fourth quarter. Now, you can lend the idea to is because the Golden State Warriors blowing out teams so much that they don't put a lot of heart and emphasis into what they do in the fourth quarter. But this is where I feel like that could be to their detriment, because now you are playing arguably the second best team offensively in the playoff run, right? You're not playing against the Utah Jazz. You're not playing against the San Antonio Spurs, where these teams struggle, right? These guys have enough players that once they get hot, just like the Warriors, it's hard to stop them. They can make runs. And if you're the Golden State Warriors, you have to finish the games strong. I keep harping about it. I sound like a broken record, but I go back to when the Boston Celtics played the Los Angeles Lakers. And the one thing that Phil Jackson told his boys, he said, we need to win the third quarter. They were up by 24 points going into that third quarter. And what did the Boston Celtics do? Exactly what teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers love to do against teams like the Golden State Warriors. Basically, you take your foot off the pedal, you let a team hang around, and the next thing you know, those shots become a little bit tougher, that lead becomes a little bit narrower, and then the clock is your enemy, not your friend. And that is one thing that I look at with this Golden State Warriors team, that while they have all of the offensive weaponry, they have this ability to play lazy basketball. And then before you know it, when they should have put the dagger in the heart of the Cavs, they give that team an opportunity to make the necessary runs to make a game closer than what it really should be.
And with that, again, I think it is amazing points, because one of the weaknesses for Golden State has been, their size and their ability to keep people off the glass. And when you alluded with your outset of your point there in terms of Cleveland having a guy like Tristan Thompson and other guys who'd be willing to crash.
Kevin Love, he had 17 points in that closeout game. 17 rebounds in that closeout game, I think, against the Boston Celtics.
So, if those guys are able to do that, and, maybe that negates my earlier point in terms of, okay, well, if they're not shooting the three ball well, they're getting second chance points, getting some easy layups and things of that nature, which should hopefully open things up for them on the outside as well. But it is a very interesting thing too, and I think you're looking at both of these teams and their bench play. We don't really know what's going to come of that, right? We don't know if the Iman Shumperts and Darren Williams and the Channing Frys, especially in the case of Darren Williams, who's never been to an NBA Finals, how are those guys going to play? And then I think for Cleveland, they got to be worried about the Ian Clarks, and we already know what Iguodala and guys like that do. But you can't let a guy like Ian Clark come off the bench and hit you for a quick 12 points and things of that nature. They're really going to have to limit things.
But if you're Mike Brown, right, do you rely on the death by depth lineup, or do you rely on, hey, this is why we threw all this money to keep these guys? Like I know that Tyronn Lue is not afraid to run LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love ragged out there if he thinks that combination is effective against the Golden State Warriors. We've seen him do this. He's leaned on his players, and he's like, screw whoever it is that I need to pull out unless I absolutely have to pull him out, right? But Mike Brown, that him and Steve Kerr, they've got this, bromance about the minutes, and they've had a very easy time of it through the course of the first, 3 rounds, essentially, of basically keeping to the code, sticking to the minutes, and pulling guys out at certain points and holding to that discipline firm. But if I'm Steph Curry or Klay Thompson or Draymond Green or Kevin Durant, I'm like, yo, F that. This is the finals. And there's a lot more riding on the line. And if I got to play 48, bro, I got to play 48.
And that's going to happen, I think, at some point in this series, especially if it goes deep as we all kind of expect it to go. The guys are going to be logging heavy minutes. But I guess my question is to you, really, just nuts and bolts, really quickly, who do you think has the better bench? Are you relying on the core of guys like Channing Frye, Kyle Korver, Iman Shumpert, Richard Jefferson and his spot minutes as well too, versus the JaVale McGee's, Ian Clark, and Andre Iguodala? Whose bench would you rather have in this series?
This is an interesting question that you asked me, Shaw. And I think the best way that I can put this is I'm more about. It's hard because the this is not the same Golden State, lineup from last couple of years, right? And I would have been heavily reliant on the fact that they have a better bench. But I think it comes down to whether or not this second unit can play defense. Because once LeBron or Kyrie or Kevin Love comes off the court, I don't know how effective those guys really are when it comes to scoring the basketball. I know how effective they're going to need to be on defending the basketball. Because when I look at the Golden State Warriors, they do have guys that can score the basketball. They have guys that are more athletic. They're not guys that are as physical as the Cleveland Cavaliers. So to answer your question, I think that the Golden State Warriors depth is still better than the Cleveland Cavaliers, but that's only predicated to the type of intensity and defense that the Cavaliers is willing to commit to when their best players come off the basketball court, because that is really the only chance that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to give their best players opportunities to maximize their offensive potential. If LeBron spends more time having to defend because the rest of the guys can't stop anybody, it's a moot point no matter how great LeBron is. Because when the Warriors continue to keep throwing people out there that's capable of upping the ante on scoring points by quarter, still maintaining that upper 20s, those 30-point type quarters, the Cleveland Cavaliers are not stopping it. They're not stopping it. The only thing you can hope for is any of these guys shooting the basketball as well as the Warriors do, which we know that is not necessarily how they wound up winning this whole thing, right? Last year. So are we saying with confidence they're going to do that again? It's not like they're playing the Boston Celtics.
And I agree, because I feel like Golden State's bench probably has a little bit more versatility. There's more playmakers, there's more shot makers, and there's guys who play both ways in essence. Can give you a couple baskets, in their spots and spaces, and give you some acceptable defense. You think a guy like Sean Livingston, always, a big problem for Cleveland traditionally. David West now into the fold as well. Two guys, again, in spot minutes who can do their thing. So if it becomes a bench battle, and I'm not sure that it will, but I would definitely give the edge to Golden State when it comes to that. But as you alluded to, look for the Cavs starters to play heavy minutes as long as nobody's in foul trouble.
Well, one thing too as well is Tyronn Lue's confidence in his bench players. I think that's another thing. Like I say, Tyronn Lue is going to lean heavily on his starters and run them out there for as long as he needs to run them out there. I wonder how much confidence inverse that he'll have on his bench players to leave them out there if they have a comfortable basketball lead, because no lead is safe against the Golden State Warriors. I mean, we've seen that already through the course of this run in the playoffs. But ultimately, if you're Tyronn Lue, you have to believe that Iman Shumpert, Channing Frye, Kyle Korver, Darren Williams, these guys are going to do something in the course of this series significant for him to start relying on the idea that he has to figure out a way to put them out there to at least give themselves a chance. Because I can't believe that he's going to lean completely on James, Irving, and Love, through the course of a possible 7-game series, and still be able to score at the rate that they were scoring, say, over the last, 2 series between the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics.
You're right.
Yeah,
and that's not going to happen, at least not in my eyes, because Golden State's defense is so good. And number one, Cleveland's offense is very isolation heavy. So a lot of LeBron,
which brings me to the next question I was going to ask you. So good point. Go ahead, finish your thought. But yeah, it's going to bring me to the next question.
Like those two guys are very ISO heavy, and then they'll try to break their man down, and then maybe look kind of last minute to to dump off a pass or whatever the case may be. But Cleveland has Golden State plays a very switching defense. They're like, they don't care. They don't feel like there are mismatches. Anybody can kind of guard anybody out there. And whether that's a false belief in when it comes to guarding guys like LeBron and Kyrie, those are their principles. And those guys are going to help, and they're going to step in the passing lanes, and they're long and they're tall. And, that may cause a problem for an isolation heavy offense like Cleveland Cavaliers. So for me, that's where Golden State really can kind of load up in certain ways, because they do feel like they can switch anybody and be okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that. You just mentioned it, Shaw. The Cleveland Cavaliers love playing ISO ball. The Golden State Warriors love being in transition. They're the best in the NBA when it comes to transition. They average around 18.5%, right? As a league high in fast breaks points off transition. When you think about the philosophies of what has made this team as good as they are, between the Cavs and their transition basketball, the Cavs and their ISO basketball, the Warriors and their transition and their screens, and the way they come off the pick and roll, who has the most effective means of scoring the basketball at high proficiency pitted against each other in this series?
I'm always going to go with a team that moves the ball. And again, LeBron is one of the best players we've ever seen. But I think Golden State, pound for pound, player for player, has the best playmakers of the two teams per se, and run an offense that's predicated on ball movement and Princeton cuts and back cuts, and finding guys at the edge on the wing and then kicking it back out, down screens, all of those things that really get you good shots. And then when you have guys who can actually make those shots, to me, that's where Golden State really just becomes like an impossible puzzle to solve for me. So I definitely lead Golden State when it comes to that conversation.
All right, now we'd be remiss, Shaw, if we didn't start talking about maybe the undercards, right? The matchups and the names that aren't getting a lot of conversation, but I think for this trilogy, they need to be discussed. So let's go ahead and first talk about the Klay Thompson factor, right? Klay Thompson, by all means, by all accounts, this has been the quietest I think that we have ever seen and heard from a name like Klay, right? Like Klay, Splash Brothers, important. Yes, I understand Durant is there. He took up a lot of that spotlight. But let's remember, too, that Klay Thompson was is still among one of the top two-way players in the game. But by all accounts, he has had a very quiet run in the playoffs. How critical is it for the Warriors to get some kind of maximum effort from an offensive perspective from Klay Thompson for them to accomplish this goal of taking the title from the Cavaliers?
Well, that's been my guy the entire season, and definitely so in the playoffs, in terms of I'm just like, all right, is he going to be able to kind of keep his cool, and understand and play a big role when necessary? Because I'm sure his time is coming. I think the finals are going to be a perfect opportunity for him to kind of break out of the slump that he's in currently in the playoffs. For me, listen, I was very concerned about Klay when KD got there. And I've even heard some conversation on radio, sports talk radio, things of that nature, where they're like, listen, if Golden State wins, this championship, maybe they say whatever you give it to them. Klay was probably the most likely player to bolt and say, you know what, okay, I won a couple chips. Now I want to go out here and have some individual success and maybe lead another team to a championship. And I think this is a series right now where he wants to maybe reestablish himself a little bit. And I think there will be some opportunities for him to do so. Because as you alluded to, he can play defense. And maybe some of that has slipped a little bit as he struggled with his shot some. So maybe he's not even as engaged on that. But I think these two teams bring the best out of each other. So I think we're going to see a very, very motivated Klay Thompson. And he can give them, 16 to 17 points a game, and shoot his normal, 45 to 47% instead of the 41% or whatever it is right now he's shooting in the playoffs. He gets 3-pointers back up there. That's going to make Golden State that much more difficult. But that said, I think if you're Cleveland, you'd rather have death by Klay than death by KD. So I think, if there was one of the two that they had to give up, they'd rather see Klay get going than KD.
All right, let's go ahead and talk on the other side of the coin. Kevin Love. We talked about how Kevin Love has just been like this little mouse, real quiet, ever since that he got brought over from the Minnesota Timberwolves. He obviously didn't play in the first finals. He played in the second one, but, you couldn't tell whether or not, even when they won it, you couldn't tell he did anything, right? But he has been a much, much more focused focal point for the Cavaliers offensively. And he is definitely, I guess you could say, he has lived up to the hype a little bit. Is he lived up to the hype enough to warrant that he will be an active voice in the Cavaliers' chances to win this title, despite what Irving and LeBron James are capable of doing in this upcoming matchup?
Obviously, he's going to have his handful offensively, right? If Draymond is the one that's primarily guarding him, and I'm sure Draymond will spend some time on LeBron as well too, but that's going to negate Kevin's Love ability to be a plus scorer in the 20-point per game range for this series. That's just how I feel about it. Where he's going to have to make his living, if you will, is on the glass, as you alluded to a little bit earlier. So I think he can still be effective. And he's still a great passer. He's one of their underrated playmakers. And everyone forgets what a great passer was coming from Minnesota because he doesn't have the ball in his hands.
Do you think Love is going to be more willing to bang down in the post if absolutely necessary? No. Like, let's say the three ball is absolutely not working for him. Do you think that he will be more forceful to establish points in the paint for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because I think that in many ways, that's exactly why Tyronn Lue could not play Kevin Love, is his unwillingness to play down in the paint and force those fouls on the Warriors front court players. But he's a different player a year from now, so I got to think that he's got to be more willing to do this.
I think having the experience of the NBA Finals under his belt, and being called out last year at certain parts of the series, and then playing a really underrated Game 7. He was very impactful in last year's series, especially in that Game 7. I think he understands what his role is going to be. But to say that he's going to go down there and bang on a regular basis, I just don't think that's realistic for him, especially if Draymond is his primary defender going up against him. Now, in switches and things of that nature, if Cleveland runs some action where he gets a nice switch on him, and, even if Durant is on him, being a lighter individual, though he might be taller and longer, maybe that's the matchup he can take some advantage of. And then maybe somebody, and do you think he could really back down Tristan in that way? I mean, not Tristan, sorry. Zaza, in that way. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be looking or banking on Kevin Love living on the block per se. He's going to try to make his money off of pick and pop and shooting the three and just kind of hang out in the corner some, but really more so defensively and making sure the Cleveland Cavaliers don't give up second opportunities to Golden State.
All right, now let's go ahead and talk about that other dude, right? Draymond Green. Listen, by all accounts, while we're enamored with the star factor, I think that there's no brighter star that has an overall impact of why we even bother to watch these games that are being played right now without a guy like Draymond Green. Because Draymond Green is the kind of brother that is filling up the stat sheets in such a way that it makes you feel like, man, what is the motivation? And I hark back to what NBA on TNT has been doing. They've been replaying over his interview back at the beginning of the season, how he was talking about, if and when I see the Cavaliers, I want to annihilate them. And you see the correlation in the way that he is playing. He is playing with a control level of ferocity. And it's amazing because we kept saying that the road for the Warriors to be at this particular point is fueled through how Draymond Green plays this basketball game, right? And the way that he's been playing this basketball game is exactly the reason why we've been saying that it's going to be hard-pressed to find a way to beat the Golden State Warriors at this level, which is why they're undefeated going into the finals, right? So how important is this Draymond Green, this type of Draymond Green going into the finals?
I mean, he's the key to almost everything they do, even offensively as well as defense, as we all already know. During the playoffs, as you alluded to, he's become a different person. He's taken this journey to the NBA Finals extremely seriously. 13.9 points, 8.7 rebounds, 7.2 assists, while shooting 50% from the floor.
Those are not wow numbers. Those are exactly right. These are not wow numbers when you talk in the magnitude of the way that the Golden State Warriors score points. It's not wow numbers if you're trying to put matchups against the top three guys for the Cleveland Cavaliers and you're trying to say, oh, well, Draymond don't score as much as this person. But Shaw, you run through each and every single one of those statistics and you find me anybody that is doing it like Draymond Green, with the exception of, say, LeBron James, right? Like
not with their efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. That to me is what is so amazing, right? And that to me is a dangerous thing if you are the Cleveland Cavaliers, because how do you stop that?
Yeah, and that is the problem. If he can continue to shoot 50% and not be bashful in his shot attempts, and 47% from the 3-point line as he's currently doing in the playoffs right now, that is going to be a problem for Cleveland of epic proportions, even with Clay not really getting into things, because I think Draymond's efficiency and the fact that he's willing to do everything and do whatever it takes offensively and defensively to get his team the W, that is, to me, is always the X factor. And not to mention the defense that he's playing with 2 blocks and 2 steals, per game, and in this as well too. So Draymond is not going to just allow himself to not be a factor. The only thing that's going to slow him down is his over exuberance and excitement, and maybe low key hatred, for the Cleveland Cavaliers in this series. If he lets his emotions get the best of him, that's the only thing that's going to stop him, because he is, he's an impact player despite not putting up extremely gaudy numbers. Those are impressive numbers, almost a triple-double, with 2 blocks and 2 steals.
And let's remember, he did hit a triple-double in that Game 7 against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which again it really magnifies how less of a performance we saw from Steph Curry and Klay Thompson in that Game 7. Because if you were to tell me that Draymond Green, coming fresh off of that suspension, comes into a Game 7 and gives you a triple-double, I should be looking at that scoreboard, that box score, and I should see blowout written all over. You know what I'm saying? At home at the Oracle Arena, the Golden State Warriors would have been hoisting a trophy if you told me that Draymond Green walked away with a triple-double. There should have been no way that the Warriors would have lost that basketball game. But again, it magnifies why the other guys, or how the other guys, did not step up to the task in order to complete the mission, or the goal, so to speak, which is to win the championship.
Right, and they let things get a little awry from them last year, and stop, in essence, running their offense through Draymond. And again, not to say that he's going down there and taking every shot, but he's their facilitator. And then Steph got a little wild with it at times, pressing, and Klay got a little wild with it at times too. And that's how they ended up losing that series last year. But I think, the ultimate X factor here really is the fact that they added Kevin Durant to this factor as well too.
Who we haven't even talked to, right? We've gone 40 plus minutes into this conversation, and we haven't even brought up the significance of what this is supposed to mean for Kevin Durant. We will in a few moments.
Right. So I think, for them, where Draymond is kind of pacing them, with their passing on offense, and obviously holding it down for them defensively, being able to switch, be able to stand guys up in the post, playing great weak side help defense and blocking shots and swatting things out of the air. The real thing that Cleveland Cavaliers have to worry about is not so much do they continue to run their offense, or do they get away from Draymond and force other guys to do it. Because now, and there's no other point to talk about it right now, Golden State also has KD, who can pass the ball, just as effectively, but is willing to take a back seat and let Draymond set him up. You know what I mean? So that, to me, is just where, again, it's just there's so many options coming at you if you're trying to defend Golden State.
All right, now one of the things, Shaw, that we talked about through the course of the regular season, watching Draymond Green play this game. I'm sorry, not Draymond Green, but Kevin Durant playing this game, playing with the Golden State Warriors. I've said it. I know maybe you didn't. You were pretty much next to me. You were with me with it, but it's something that I said I noticed about Kevin Durant. This is a Kevin Durant that has a completely different mindset. This is not about Kevin Durant being the highest paid player in the game of basketball. This is not about Kevin Durant not wanting to play with Russell Westbrook. There's a Kevin Durant that's been playing through the course of this season that really feels like he's got an axe to grind. And I think a lot of it has obviously been perpetuated because of the decision that's been made. But I think more importantly, it's about Kevin Durant's perception about where he feels like he fits in this whole thing that we talk about in the NBA. Like, people want to make those comparisons about Kevin Durant to LeBron James and this, that, and the third. You put Kevin Durant on that basketball court, Shaw. What I did see from him over the last couple of seasons prior to him this year is that he was very, very pensive. He was very quiet, kind of back in the shadows. Yeah, he hit some key shots, but he didn't have the loud abrasiveness of his game out on full display. And I feel like the only time that it ever happened was when Russell Westbrook went on injury and he had to shoulder the team, a la like he did back in Seattle. And I feel like in this situation, he could have easily did the same thing playing next to Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. But his game not only spoke volumes, but also his mouth spoke volumes. And I think you can have seen that through the course of this series against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the regular season, that he wants to be a part of this beef, this disliking of franchises and stuff like that. He wants to get in the middle of it a little bit. And I think that to me bodes well for a team like the Golden State Warriors, because that's exactly what you need. An offensive mouthpiece like a Draymond Green's the defensive mouthpiece.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. I mean, he knew what he was getting himself into when he came to Golden State. It was to win a chip, and it was to go and beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he didn't really care what anybody had to say about it. This is his goal. This is his mission. And, it's seek and destroy at this point in the NBA Finals. So you're going to see a very aggressive KD, as you've alluded to, has been more vocal and has just gained confidence, as a man, and even just kind of understanding, how life works, how the media works, and things of that nature. And I think, we've seen that throughout this entire year, especially the last 2 years, where athletes are just more vocal. And I think KD is definitely at the forefront of that. And now, especially playing with a guy like Draymond, that's going to give you a little bit more bravado, a little bit more confidence, when you're going out there and talking. And again, you can back it up. And then even if you yourself don't play at a certain level, your teammates are going to pick you up because you have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond on your roster as well too. So KD is right in the middle of this. There's no backing down in terms of worrying about his longevity, I guess, within the rivalry per se. Yeah, this is his first year in, but he's just as vested as anybody, because he's felt all the hate that he perpetuated upon himself.
Real quick, Shaw, before we get into our predictions, which KD do you think is the key for the Warriors to win? Offensive KD or defensive KD?
I don't think you ever really have to worry about his offense. I don't think that's ever going to be an issue.
I'm just saying, like, which to you has to stand out more? Like, you talked about Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, right? And we talked about even Draymond Green and his high efficiency of shooting the three ball. Kevin Durant is a great passer. He doesn't always necessarily have to take the shot because he's so efficient shooting the basketball anyway. He can give other guys opportunities and good looks to shoot the basketball. But what I'm wondering about is, with even all of that, what could speak more loudly about the value of Kevin Durant? Is it more about what he's going to do offensively or what we've actually seen from him defensively playing for this Warriors team? Because to me, I think that that's more the key for Kevin Durant. That if he does what LeBron James did to Steph Curry last year, blocking shots off backboards like he did to Andre Iguodala, if Kevin Durant starts doing that to Kyrie Irving shots, blocking three-point shots off of Kevin Love, or any shots made by LeBron James, that to me might be what sparks the Warriors to do what they need to do against the Cavaliers.
Right, and I agree. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think you have to worry about his offense. It's going to be what it's going to be. Even if he's not scoring 30, 35, or 40 a game, whatever, he's going to just ease his way into 20 points. But I think what he does defensively and even on the glass as well, too, making sure Cleveland's not getting second chance points, and being a help defender. And we saw him, really lock in defensively this year. By far and away, at least statistically, his best defensive season in terms of statistical numbers. If that's the Kevin Durant that we see in the NBA Finals, that's going to make things, again, very, very tough for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who already have a tall task ahead of them regardless. So, yeah, defensively, for me, KD is where he's probably going to have to hang his hat on a little bit in the series.
All right, you're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our NBA Finals preview between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. Thursday, it all starts. And we will be the ones tracking it, each and every single game being played through the finals. So be sure to keep us locked so you can get the full post-game analysis by yours truly, Warren Shaw, Cali of the Baseline NBA podcast. All right, Shaw. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's break it down to how we basically see it. Predictions, analysis. Who do you have? How many games? What do you think are the key factors?
One of the key factors I still say is going to be Klay Thompson for Golden State. Just what he does on both sides of the basketball, but mainly, trying to get himself on track offensively. If he becomes like the weapon that he really is, then Golden State, Cleveland is not really going to have much of a chance in this series. I think, and they've been running through this without him pretty much. Just again, I misspoke a little bit earlier. He's only shooting 38% in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, only 38%, but like still better than what, like 75% of the league at this particular point to shoot 35%.
No, not 38. From three, from the floor.
From the floor. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. He's 38 from the floor. He's about 36 from the three, which again, that's better than the league average per se. But if he can come out and step up and do things that he's capable of doing and get those open shots and knock those down, that's going to be a huge thing. But and then for Cleveland, I think one of the key factors is really going to be their overall bench. And which one of that triumvirate, if you will, from the shooting guard position, J.R. Shumpert and Kyle Korver, which one of those guys gives them plus minutes, can get hot, and maybe it's it's a different guy each series as it has been throughout the playoffs. Darren Williams and people like that too need to come off and play well. But overall, it's hard for me to pick against the Golden State Warriors. I think this is going to go 6. Golden State, go ahead and raising the Larry Bryant Trophy on Cleveland's home floor, no less, in 6 games. That's what I got, man. What about you?
Well, this is going to be it's tough because I've been wavering back and forth. The dominance of LeBron James at times just completely consumes you and overwhelms you. There's not like any way to stop or stymie. And you remember, Shaw, we talked about this before in the series against the Boston Celtics. We said, if you're the Boston Celtics, what do? Do you just allow LeBron James to, do what he does, drop 50 on you, and you stop everybody else. And then you start looking at the roster that the Boston Celtics had, and you say, does it even matter? Because it's hard for them to match themselves up against the rest of the roster that the Cleveland Cavaliers have. But now you have a team like the Golden State Warriors who do have the ability to match up against their best players. It's just a question of, will they play up to the level necessary that I think the Cavaliers are going to push them to? And the answer is clearly, I think, yes. I mean, there's so much riding on this. I'm going to talk about it from the Cleveland Cavaliers side, Shaw, like you did for the Warriors side. I think the key here is going to be guys like J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, Richard Jefferson. These guys that are going to be on the basketball court, taking up minutes and having opportunities to shoot the basketball. Channing Frye, Kyle Korver. They have to hit the three. They have got to force the Golden State Warriors, who are basically the best team defensively in the NBA, to extend themselves defensively and be honest with them playing the three. To your point earlier before, if the Cleveland Cavaliers are hitting the three ball at a high percentage, they are going to be in it and possibly are going to push the Golden State Warriors to make pressure shots, which I think at times can get the better of them. Making decisions as high as their IQ is, sometimes they get the better of them and they will make mistakes. Ergo, high propensity of turning over the basketball. The Cleveland Cavaliers win the second and the fourth quarter in each and every single one of the games that they play. They essentially win the basketball game. That being said, on the other side for the Golden State Warriors, their defense has to stymie those runs. They've got to prevent the Cleveland Cavaliers from shooting at an efficiency that equates what the Golden State Warriors do. With that being said, the Golden State Warriors are just too damn good, man. Like, they've just got way too many bodies and bullets to throw at you. You know what I'm saying? And then when they're not done with it, you can still throw some more people out there. They can throw anything that they want out there. It's just a matter of whether or not they can play at the level that they're capable of playing. I think that the Warriors are playing on a different level right now. They have a different a level of intensity, and it's very similar to how the San Antonio Spurs looked at the Miami Heat that was led by LeBron James in 2012 to 2013. This is not the same game that's being played, and you got to wonder, will LeBron have enough in him to figure out a way to get this Cavaliers team to play at this type of level throughout the series? I think it goes 7. My heart says 6, but I think it goes 7, and if it goes 7, Warriors don't allow what happened to them last year. They win the title, they take it, but it also raises a lot of questions about how LeBron James wants to see this thing moving forward. And while we may question his legacy a little bit, I don't think you can knock what he's forced other franchises to do, like what the Warriors had to do for this season to put themselves in this position.
Cleveland's the underdog no matter what. So, we're both picking Golden State, and I think the majority of people are picking Golden State. I read some article not too long ago where I think the Warriors are a 93% chance favorite, in essence, to win the series and everything like that. And that's just kind of the monster that LeBron is up against now. But if he gets it done, I don't know what more can be said about his legacy after
this. You cannot put him in a conversation next to Kobe Bryant. I know Kobe Bryant is one of the best to do it, but you look at the circumstances in which LeBron James has these storylines to play with to etch his greatness, and it would be hard-pressed for you to tell me that it's only the titles now that stop them. Now he would have 5 titles, and you look at the degree of difficulty he has had to ascend his teams to get to those titles. He will have surpassed Kobe Bryant, in my opinion, no matter what anybody tells me. Because an argument can still be made that LeBron James, still and by far, getting the players that he has, he was always the better player on that basketball court. Whereas during the times that Kobe Bryant started winning his titles, he still had Shaquille O'Neal.
Right. And then to me, again, like I said earlier, I just want to see anarchy. I want to see what happens. And maybe nothing happens to Golden State if they lose. Maybe nothing at all happens. But I want to see the potential struggles that could come into play. Does that create dissension? Does Klay Thompson be like, you know what, bump this? You know what I mean? I need to find a way up out of here. Whatever. I sacrificed and we still didn't get it done. Like, to me, like, I just want to see a little bit of drama, So I don't suspect that we're going to actually see that, and it's not going to happen in that way. And again, I am not rooting for one team or the other. But hey, man, I like to see a little bit of angst. So, hey, it would be interesting to see, if the Cavaliers were able to pull it up. But then, like I said, you wouldn't be able to turn on SportsCenter or anything because, the LeBron writing would be at an all-time level, and it would be deservedly so because, again, he's up against it in this series, And if he can get it done with Kyrie and Kevin Love and Ty Lue as a coach, he deserves all the credit, and then some moving forward, bro.
Well said, my brother. Well said. So once again, we appreciate you and yours for tuning in to our preview of the NBA Finals between the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors. It is the trilogy. Be sure to check out my man Shaw on Twitter at Shaw Sports NBA, or check me out at GameFace Lee. Be sure to check out the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. We will be tweeting throughout the course of the NBA Finals. And then once again, be sure to hop right back on after the NBA Finals and catch our post-game analysis each and every single game throughout the NBA Finals, giving you our ins and outs, without a doubt, and all of that good stuff, talking about what's happening in this NBA Finals series. Once again, for the Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. Have fun watching the NBA Finals. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.